D. Webb, welcome to the Player's Perspective Uncensored podcast. My brother got a little different background. We recording from the outside now, so we're gonna enjoy it, man. Welcome to the podcast.
Man, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I must admit, before we get started, man, I have a confession to make, man. When I was younger, I've always been a Cardinal fan, man, and I'm not even sure if I'm the only one to say this, but I'm gonna tell you, I've never told you this before, man, but I confess, man, I used to kind of get you mixed up with Troy Smith when I was younger, man.
Oh, okay.
That was a confession moment, man.
Do I leave now, or do you want me to leave later? Okay, let me tell you this. As a former player, and you probably get confused with this sometimes yourself. As a former player, a lot of fans don't even remember what era you were in. So at least you got the same era correctly, because I've had people say, "Are you Robbie Valentine? Did you play with Scooter? Did you play with Daryl Griffin?" So at least you got the same era. So I guess I could be confused with worse people, I guess.
Already. Now, let me start off the podcast by asking you this, man. Do you drink bourbon?
I do.
Okay. What's your go-to?
My go-to is Larceny.
Nice.
I would drink that. I would drink that anytime. If I have enough disposable income, I will go and get a bottle of Old Carter.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Old Carter.
I have, but I haven't got a chance to try it, though. I haven't got a chance to try it.
Well, I'll tell you this. I went over to a friend of mine needed someone to perform a wedding for them. So I actually performed the wedding for them. And during the reception, they said, if you wanted to taste a little bourbon. So I was like, absolutely.
Right.
So we got a little bourbon together, and I tasted it. It was the best bourbon I ever tasted in my life. So I asked, what was it? And they told me it was Old Carter. So I went to the liquor store next week, and I asked them, can you give me a bottle of the Old Carter? They said, you sure you want that? It's up high. I said, sure, let's go for it. So they go up and they bring it down. It's $159 a bottle.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
I said, that's good. Can I get another bottle of Larceny instead? Yeah, I wasn't ready to pay $160 for a bottle of bourbon. So
yeah, Larceny's nice. I haven't tried the Old Carter, though. I'm gonna have to try it when I'm out at the bar or something and see it, make sure I like it first before you go out there and spend that $159 on a bottle.
You'll like it. I promise you will like it.
All right, cool. Now, tell me about some of your fond memories. You played at the University of Louisville. You played for the legendary Coach Denny Crum. You come out of Lawrence North High School, famous basketball program in the state of Indiana. You come down to the University of Louisville. Tell me about your time playing for Coach Crum and at the University of Louisville, some of your fondest memories.
Well, let me tell you this. Coming from Lawrence North was a great opportunity to go to the University of Louisville. I got recruited by a lot of schools in the country for football, basketball, and track, and decided I wanted to play basketball because basketball had air-conditioned gyms, and it gave me an opportunity to be able to basically run and jump, and that's what I was known for in the first place. So coming to Louisville was great. It gave me an opportunity to play with some of the best basketball talent in the country, play with and against them. But the transition for me was not as easy. When you are an athlete and you think about universities, the University of Louisville is probably the school you think of when you think about athletes. So I had schools that were recruiting me. They told me, don't go to Louisville because everyone will be just like you. And they were actually right. They had people like Jerome Harmon, was a redshirt player that was going to be eligible when I first got there. You had Bradford Smith, you had Everett Sullivan, you had all these guys about my height that could run and jump just like me. So I remember vividly going to Coach Crum, going to his office and saying, Coach, I appreciate the opportunity to come here, and this is not a question of me transferring. It's a question of whether it would be in my best interest to go ahead and redshirt this first year. And he sat me down and we had a long conversation about options. And he said, well, I do think that this may be an opportunity for you to kind of focus, because when I was in high school, I didn't focus on basketball. I had other sports I was concerned with and dealing with. And so it was an opportunity for me to use that first year as a transition for academics and also for athletics too, because I specialized in basketball for the first year ever. So that was great. But after that first year, I got a chance to play sparingly my freshman year, but got a chance to take some great trips, go to Hawaii, play in the Maui Classic, got a chance to play in Vegas, against some of those great Vegas teams back in the early 90s. Played against that team down in Lexington a few years. Good battles with some of those guys. Some of the guys that were on that team I grew up with and played with and against when I was in high school AAU. So, playing basketball at the University of Louisville was a dream come true for me, and it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Nice. Now, once you finished up your career at the University of Louisville, you were transitioning into becoming a lawyer. How was that, trying to be an athlete and also trying to study to be a lawyer at the same time?
When you say studying to become a lawyer and being an athlete?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you this. I graduated in 1992 and had a year of eligibility to play in 1993. So the question was whether I was going to go to law school during that first year, during that fifth year that I had, or whether I was going to go to grad school. So I talked to the people over at the law school, and they said that law school is so intense and so focused that it was probably best that you wait until after you get finished playing if you really want to go to law school. So I took their advice, had my fifth year, worked on master's in public administration, and then after I got that, went on to law school. Law school is something like no one has ever seen. You have to actually be in it to understand it. You can hear people talk about it, but unless you're actually doing it for yourself, it's hard to actually explain and understand, because the work is so intense. Like, for example, that first year, you have all these different classes, and you're so energized and psyched that you're in law school. So August, that work is coming, you're knocking it out because you're excited about being in law school. September, you're knocking it out because you're excited about being in law school. October, November, December, you're tired of being in law school, but that work is still coming. And it's almost like a job that you have to treat every day. And I did not treat it like a job. In high school, college, you can kind of study for an exam a couple of days before, go and knock the exam out and do well. It's not how it is in law school. And I had a rude awakening at the end of that first semester, because I don't mind telling anyone, I actually flunked out after my first semester. I did not know how to study. I had a few family issues that came in front of me right before I was about to start taking my exams. I should have gone to talk to my professor and say, look, I need to sit out for a second. Let me take these exams after all these things are over. But I did not. Got a letter after the semester was over letting me know that, I'm not on probation. I'm not even, they didn't even want me to come back. So I had to sit out for that second semester and kind of do a little soul searching. And brother, I will tell you this, I was depressed. I was humiliated. No one knew where I was, because I basically stayed in my apartment only to come out to eat and possibly go to a place just to play a little basketball away from the university. So sat down with the professors after like 6 months or so, let them know, look, this is what happened. They said, okay, we'll let you back in conditionally. And so they gave me all these terms I had to meet. Went back, and I guess what you say, the rest is history. But it was a hard transition for me, because I didn't know what to expect and didn't do well, but learned from those mistakes. And I think the transition from basketball to that kind of helped me, because when you're playing, you don't always win a game. But one thing that Coach Crum taught us was that you don't lose a game twice. You don't lose the game itself, and then you don't, but you got to learn the lesson from it. So when I went back, I learned every lesson that I, from not doing well that first semester. I studied a lot differently, talked to my professors, did everything I was supposed to do that when I went back, so that I could be successful that second time around, and I was.
Nice. Great story. Definitely great for people to hear, man, that don't know that about you. I didn't know that about you, but it's very inspiring, man, for people that may be going through a similar situation. So what inspired you to want to be a lawyer in the first place? What was your motivation, or what was something that happened, or what was your cause for wanting to be a lawyer?
Well, I tell you this, when I was growing up, I grew up in Indianapolis, and my father was always an inspiration to me. My father, I used to say he was a little A activist. He wasn't out in front of the marching lines. He didn't. He may have marched, but he wasn't leading the marches.
Right.
He was the kind of guy that would go down the street to have people sign petition to get the street paved, or he would see some type of injustice that went on at a store, so he would have people sign petitions to do things differently. We want this law to be changed. He wasn't one of those people that would beat his chest, but he would kind of quietly try and get some things done. And I saw that growing up. So when I'm about 5, 6, 7 years old, I remember actually talking to him about how to make things different. And he said, well, when you grow up, you have a chance to not only make things different, but you can change laws. You can defend people. You can do all those things. So he started planting the seed for me to be a lawyer back when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. Doesn't hurt that one of his favorite shows was Good Times, and Michael Evans was supposed to be the first Black Supreme Court justice, second Black Supreme Court justice, because he used to always talk about being the next Thurgood Marshall. Well, when I was growing up, I was supposed to be the next Thurgood Marshall. So that's one of the things my father taught me. He put in my ear. He emphasized the importance of academics and how it can lead to change, and talked about being academics being the great equalizer. You can do just about anything, especially if you know how to change the laws. And that's one thing that he encouraged me from early on. And that's one of the things I decided to do.
Nice. Now, what are a lot of similarities, or maybe some similarities, or no similarities, but what are some, parallels that you see being an athlete and being a lawyer?
Well, definitely preparation. In order for me to go into a court, especially when I was practicing, I had to be prepared every time I went in, because you never know what to expect. So, for example, I remember when I first came to the University of Louisville, Coach Crum talked to us about this high, the high-low cut, the guard cut.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but there was basically one play that Coach Crum had with like 30 different variations of it. So it prepared me when I went to law school and when I started practicing law, because you can know exactly what you're supposed to do, but what do you do in case someone stops that particular move? You have to go to plan B.
Right.
So it gave me an opportunity to prepare and understand what preparation was, understood how to look at the other side, to prepare for the other side. We used to watch a lot of film. He used to talk about, well, this is what the other team is going to do. So in order for you to prepare for that, you need to know what they're going to do as well. So it's the same kind of similarities. Obviously, it's not physical, but there was a lot of mental preparation that is similar in my opinion.
Right. And it seemed like it's such a battle, man. And I asked you that because, I've never actually really been in a courtroom, when a prosecutor and a defense lawyer.
That's good to know.
Are go well, when they're going at it, but just it seemed like it's so much of a competition factor. And like you said, you always have to have a counter, because it seems like the lawyers always have an ace in their pocket. Well, I'm always got this because I know he's not going to be ready for this. And, I see a lot of similarities in basketball, because like you said, you have one move, but you prepare and you scout so much that I know he's going to do this, but then you have to have a counter that they're maybe not prepared for. And so that's good to know, man. That's a really good comparison to the two. Now, how many years were you practicing lawyer? How many years were you practicing law as a lawyer before you decided to run for judge? Excuse me.
Before I decided to run for judge, or before I became judge?
Before you decided to run.
Okay, before I decided to run, I'm going to say it was about close to 15 years before I actually ran.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because to be a lawyer in Kentucky, you can be one of two ways. You can either be appointed by a governor, or you can run on your own. Anytime there's a vacancy, you have an opportunity to put your resume in, an application in to fill that vacancy. And I did that a few times. And there's something called a judicial nominating commission. That nominating commission will shortlist all those candidates down to about 3, and those 3 would go to the governor, and the governor makes a decision. Well, in my case, I got shortlisted twice, and I'm thinking that, okay, I'm one of 3. I may be able to get it this time. And each time I did not get it. So I finally said to myself, well, I'm going to take it out of the hands of a few, these few little people, and I'm going to take it to the people. So I remember there was an open seat running, and I thought the mere fact that I played basketball for the University of Louisville and I had some name recognition, I'd done some good work, had some high profile cases in the city, people would know and understand who I was. And after going through that election, I was very humbled because I did not win. I did not win at all. And I remember sitting down, my face in my hands, not necessarily crying, but crying hard on the inside. And I said to myself that I would never run for judge again unless the governor appointed me and I had to run to keep my seat. That was the only way I would ever run for a judge again. Well, a few years later, I'm going to say about 4 or 5 years later, there was a vacancy that came open, and the judge that was leaving gave me a call. I remember very, very vividly. I was actually sitting, I had a hard day in court, went over to the park across the river over in Jeffersonville. I was just looking over at the city, just wondering, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do? I received a telephone call from the judge, and she told me, look, I am going to retire. When I retire, I want you to get this seat. She said, I can't do anything for you, but encourage you. But I would love to see you in this seat. And I vividly remember telling her, no.
Really?
I'm not doing this. I said, I've tried to run. I've tried to get the appointment. So basically what you're doing is you're setting me up for disappointment once again. And that's not something my ego wants to take again, is disappointment. She said, well, just go through. You still have the application. I know it hasn't changed. You just add a few things here and there, talk to some people, just add some things, just see what happens. What's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is that my feelings get hurt again. That's the worst thing that can happen. So long story short, I put my application back in, and then I get, it was a different system this time because the Judicial Nominating Commission had interviews, in-person interviews then. So Judicial Nominating Commission, they bring me in along with like 10 other people. We interview individually, and they ask me all these different questions. And they ask me, who's your favorite judge? Why do you think you're qualified? All these different things. And I'm giving them answers, probably answers that are the correct answers, but at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, I'm just going through the motions because I know they're not going to shortlist me. And even if they do, I know how it is getting up to the next level. So I received a telephone call after the interviews are over, and I go to Frankfurt and meet with the governor's cabinet, and they asked me a few questions. Who's your favorite Supreme Court justice and why? And they say, if you don't get this, what are you going to do? And I basically looked them in the eye and I said, be honest with you, I'm going to keep doing the same thing I'm doing now. I said, this job is a very important job, but it's not, nor will it ever define me. I said, I have tried my best to do the best for people. I always talk about trying to make people the best representations of themselves. So you putting a robe on me is not going to make me better or worse, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be the same guy, and I'm still going to fight for the people that need to have their voices heard, and I'm going to do the best I can to have justice for people. I walked out of there feeling confident, feeling good. Not that I had got their favor, but just knowing I was who I was, and I was not going to let them define me. So walk out of there. About 2 weeks later, I get a telephone call while I'm headed out of town for a case, saying that I had received the appointment and when could I start. Had to pull the car over for a few minutes, got outside. Did a little Jesus dance for a second, and called my family, let them know that I was going to be the newly appointed judge and would be in the seat and would have to wait a year to run. But I was going to be the new judge in Jefferson County Family Court.
Nice. Now, you were the first African-American male family court judge. Now, was that something, was it always a goal of yours that you wanted to be a judge, or did you feel like that was a way for you to be more impactful in the community?
Neither. I never thought about becoming a judge until another judge asked me to consider. Um, like I said before, my parents talked about me being the next Thurgood Marshall, but I thought my role was just to be that person that gave a voice to the voiceless, a person that would take on cases that were tough, a person that would fight for equality and justice, no matter what they were, no matter who they were, the color of their skin, whatever the situation was. I just wanted to make someone give someone a second chance and have a better opportunity in the future. So I never thought about being a judge until a judge actually said that I should think about it. He would be honored to share the bench with me. So it wasn't until about 2010, 2011, around that time, when the idea first came to my mind about actually sitting on the bench and presiding over cases.
Nice. But now that you are a judge, have you ever thought about any other political office aspirations, being a mayor or going on to any other
Well,
official offices?
I would tell you this. I haven't thought about it as much as other people have thought about it for me. I, I would tell you this. I will get a phone call from people asking me about running for mayor, running for attorney general. They've asked me a lot of different things. I would tell you the same thing I tell people all the time. I am perfectly happy with fighting for children and families, making sure they have opportunities, going to schools, doing everything I can in this position right now. I have a job, and I absolutely love the job that I have right now. I have no idea what God has for me, but I know that right now He has this for me. And this is the door that I have walked through and where I'm supposed to be. If some other door opens up, I will look at whatever He has for me, because as they say, what God has for you is for you. I know that He has this for me right now. So presently, I'm not looking for any other position other than to be the family court judge in Division 10, to preside over 70,000 families that I'm supposed to be presiding over.
Right, right on. Now, what's the toughest part about being a judge?
Making decisions. And I'll tell you why I say that. In most courts, like for example, in district court or general circuit court, there's a judge and you have juries. You get a case that comes in, there's a dispute, whether it's a criminal dispute, whether it's a civil dispute, it goes to trial. The jury decides, and the judge is the trier of fact, but the jury decides if a person's innocent or guilty. A person has to pay, they don't pay. In family court, it's a lot different. You are the sole decision maker in every case that comes in your courtroom. So whether it's a divorce, whether it's a child custody case, whether it's a removal to go to foster care, whether it's an adoption, every case that comes across your desk, you're responsible for. So it can be tough. Now, I will tell you this. One of my favorite shows is a show called This Is Us. And it talks about, it's a show about a kid that was adopted into a family. But I'll never forget, they went to court for the actual adoption. And the judges, after the case was over, the judges went back into their chambers and they asked the question that I'm going to assume they ask all the time. Did you do any good today? And the answer is always, I don't know. I don't know what kind of impact my decision is going to have. Now, I know it's going to be an impact somewhere or another, right, but I do know that the decisions I make by a pen or by an agreement has the potential to change people's lives, not only that life, or it has potential to change lives, for generations. So it's tough with that. I know that, for example, if a woman is seeking or a man is seeking a domestic violence order, I know that the protections I could possibly give that person will either save a life or potentially put a person in harm's way. So it's a lot of decisions that have to be made that are tough decisions, but I guess that's why they put us in these positions, because not everyone wants to do them, but I gladly accept all the responsibilities I have.
Right. Now, when you talked about first running for judge, you spoke about, having name recognition, being popular from playing basketball at the University of Louisville, and hoping that may get you in the door. But now that you've gotten in the door, and particularly being the first African-American male, do sometimes people try to undercut your work and your dedication that you've put in by saying that you're in a position that you are now because of basketball, and instead of, you know, the work and dedication that you've put in? Do people try to undercut your work sometime because of the position that you're in?
Well, sometimes they do. But I know my purpose and I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So people will say what they want to say. You're only in here because you play basketball for U of L. Well, I know that there are some people that voted for me that are UK fans also. I know that there are always going to be detractors. And as my parents would tell you, not everyone's going to like you. The question is, what do you do once you get into the position? Now that I'm in the position, it does not make me any difference. Like, for example, if the person sitting across from me, they don't care who I used to play for. They care about if I'm going to keep this child with them or if I'm going to move it over to the next family. They don't care that I used to dunk a basketball. They care that I can make the right decision in court for them that's going to serve their interests or the best interests of their child. So it may have been something that got me in the door. Some people may say something about it, but believe me, if you're in this position long enough, you develop thick skin, and you let the detractors just detract the way they're supposed to. But I have a job to do, and I could care less what other people have to say about it.
Right. Now, like you said, you hold a lot of power in the decisions that you make, and they have a huge impact on families or whatever the decision is going to impact. Have you ever been presented with any danger or threatened or, you know, try to be bribed in any sort of way with, you know, the decisions that you make, or just in the courtroom at all?
Well, I tell you this, I've been threatened more than one occasion. I've had to have police detail. I've had to have
Really?
police tell me that someone has threatened me, whether it's online. I've had yes, it can be dangerous. I know that there are some people out there that don't like some of the things I've decided on. For example, if there's a decision where I have to remove a child and place it with someone else, um, that man or that woman may not like my decision.
Hmm.
And as great of a job as I could be doing for one family, another family thinks I'm doing a terrible job because I didn't give them what they wanted.
Right.
Not everyone's going to be happy with my decisions, and because of that, yes, I have received death threats, and it's something I deal with. That's why I don't talk about my family too much. Don't put them on social media. I don't let people know who is associated with me, because if they can't get to me, sometimes there's a theory that they may be able to get to somebody else.
Right.
It's a tough job, and you have to make decisions that people don't like. But yeah, I have received some threats that are credible threats, and I just take it in stride, though.
Right. Now, have you ever had any decisions or any cases where you make a decision and sometimes you look back and you be like, you know, sort of question it? Or do you make your decision and that's it and you move on from it?
Well, inevitably, you have some. There are some cases that are kind of cut and dry. Like, for example, you have a decision where, let's say, for example, there's an adoption, where you have to terminate some parental rights, where maybe a mother and father were not involved with this child at all. They meet not only the statutory requirements, but they just haven't been there. No one's seen them in years or so. So it's an easy decision to be able to terminate parental rights and then give this child to a family that really wants to take care of this child. So decisions like that are a little easier. But when you have, for example, let's say real world situation, you have an EPO that comes in front of your courtroom. You have a petitioner that says and C have happened, and they have pictures to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
The respondent or the defendant says A, B, and C did not happen, and I have pictures to show that this has happened. It happened this way, and he or she has done it before in the past. So you have to make decisions based upon factors that you may not even know about. So do I question my decisions sometimes? Sometimes I do. But what I try to do always, I try to listen to both sides. I don't go in with any preconceived notions anytime I have a case. I think about things thoroughly. I have a good staff attorney that I can bounce ideas off of. I have other judges that I can bounce ideas off of. And before I make a decision, people need to know that that decision has been well thought out. And there's a reason behind me doing anything and everything that I do. And I hope that I've made the best decision. Now, I also tell people as well, I didn't invite you into my courtroom. So you're in my courtroom for a reason. It's either because you
Right.
did something or didn't have the ability to do something. And unfortunately, I have to be the decision maker at this point. So my job at worst is not to make it any worse than it actually was.
Right.
So I never bring situations in my court to try and create something worse. It's always something that's always coming in that's happened well before I got it. They got in front of me and they just couldn't figure it out. Unfortunately, I had to be the decision maker. I had to be the bad guy in some situations.
Right. Now, right now, the world's dealing with a pandemic, COVID-19, everybody's social distancing, trying to stay safe. How has that impacted your courtroom and how you handle your proceedings that go on in your courtroom?
Well, it's impacted our courtroom greatly. For example, there have not been live hearings. Now, there have been hearings that have gone on. A lot of those hearings have taken place remotely by Zoom, by Skype, so we can get a lot of things done that way. But the court has slowed down, but it hasn't stopped. I understand the pandemic. I understand the situation that we're in right now, but we still have decisions that we have to make. There's still lives that are being affected, not only by the pandemic, but by the circumstances that have created themselves prior to that pandemic. So, for example, let's say Monday officially our court opens back up, but our Supreme Court has told us that we need to handle as many cases that we can remotely. So I will have a paternity docket or issues regarding child support.
Mm-hmm.
If they come down there's going to be a room that they can go to and participate through Zoom. If there is a domestic violence issue that I'll handle like on Tuesday, they can call in and use Zoom. They can use the telephone. If they show up, I'll let them come into the courtroom with masks on. But we have to adhere to the same policies as everyone else. But justice does not stop. The court has not been closed, and we've been trying to handle as many cases as possible. Has it been difficult? Yes, but it doesn't mean that we can't try and figure it out. We've tried to figure out the best way we could just to give people an opportunity to have the voices heard and have the cases go forward.
Nice. Now, you're very active in the community. You're very active with the youth. I've heard you say on occasions that you try to reach out and talk to the youth before they have to talk to you and before they reach your courtroom. You do a big Stop the Violence campaign. You're a big advocate. I don't want to say you're an activist, but you're very active in the community. What does that mean?
I'm cool. I'm cool with being an activist.
Okay. What does that mean to you, really, with everything that's going on now, just to be so active in the community and trying to get a message across to the youth and really trying to get them on the right path towards success? What does that mean to you?
Well, I would tell you this. One of the biggest things one of the reasons why I actually started this several years ago was because of my kids. I have kids that are in college when they graduate from high school. So when I originally started going to schools, I was going to their schools when they were first grade, second grade, because I was trying to convince those kids basically to do right, because I didn't want to see my kids get in trouble too. So what initially started out as something that was supposed to be geared towards my kids became a whole group of kids. And that mission has kind of carried on into my practice, into the things I do in court right now, because I still go out and I do a lot of things in schools when schools were open. Basically, I remember Mr. Cosby, Bill Cosby, when his son was killed. He said something that really stuck with me. Now, regardless of what people think of Bill Cosby, one thing that he said was when his son was killed, the person who killed his son, he basically said he wishes that he could have been around to raise his son, to raise that kid, so that those things that he did would not happen. So that kind of stuck with me for a long time. So I just want to see Louisville be the best it can possibly be. I want to see kids flourish. I want to see things better than they were when I first got here, and they weren't bad when I first got here. But I always want to see people perform their best, be at their best, no matter what the situation is. Whether it be my kids, whether it be your kids, or anybody else's, I always want to see someone do better and have an opportunity to excel if that's what they want to do. And I want to create a platform, create an avenue for them to be that way. So trying to get with kids at the elementary school level to talk about citizenship, talk about keeping the laws, talk about what it means to do good and be good, what it means to be my brother's keeper. Talking to those kids at that point, they will grow up thinking the same way, and they can tell other people that way. It's the whole notion of each one reach one or each one teach one. If you continue to do that, hopefully good will continue to trickle down so that all the stuff that we see now will be something of the past.
Right. And right now, the kids are seeing a lot of protests around the United States and in big metropolitan cities. In the city of Louisville, you see it in Atlanta, you see it really going on in Minnesota because of social injustices, police brutality, the killing of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and the latest one, George Floyd. What, um, when you see this going on, what are your thoughts and what are the talks that you have with your kids? Because your kids are, are African-American, male and female. What are the talks that you have with your kids, on these topics and on this subject?
Well, let me tell you this. My kids and I have had talks about this for years. So the fact that these things are happening now, I hate to say we talked about it before, because these things have not stopped, and they have continued going even since they were kids, long before they were going on when I was a kid. So we have to have those real world conversations and talk about what it means to be a person of color in this community or in communities, the things you have to do to stay out of harm's way. I tell my sons especially, I have an almost 23 and almost 22-year-old son, and I tell them, your job, I don't care what it is, I don't care what you're doing, when you leave out of this house, or they have their own place now, when you leave from your house, your job is to get home. Your job is to get home. No matter what the situation is, no matter what the circumstances are, your job is to get home. Let's say you're stopped by the police, justified, unjustified. Your job is to get home. You have a dad that's a lawyer at the time. You have a dad that's a lawyer. You assert what your rights are, and that's what you do. If they tell you to jump, you jump. If they tell you to lay down, you lay down, because my job is to make sure that you're safe to get home. And we will fight this stuff later on, but your job is to get home. Now, I'll say this. I also have a cousin that's a police officer that will say his job is to get home. So you have two forces that are coming against one another. And I'm hoping that at some point we will figure it out, we'll work it out. But everyone wants to get home when they leave. And it's my hope that through the protests, through the peaceful protests that we have right now across the country, that the understanding that everyone wants to be treated equally with dignity and respect. Everyone wants that, whether they're a police officer or whether they're a person of color. I know that's what we all want. Now, the question is, how do we find that common ground with everyone? Because there are good police officers. We have seen that they're not so good police officers. But I also know that there are good people and bad people, no matter what kind of what role that we're playing. I'm hoping that cooler heads can prevail. We can find justice for the people that have been that have left us too soon, and hopefully we can do some things that will prevent these senseless deaths, in the future.
Right. Now, George Floyd was just murdered. Well, I say he was murdered,
I
but
would say he was murdered as well.
yeah, he was murdered, and it was on video. And the officer, Derek Chauvin, was arrested, and he was charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Now, you being in the position that you're in, I'm not sure how much that you can talk on this, but maybe you could break down the charges and what they mean, and as compared to the other charges, because I wish it was first-degree murder. because he did it intentionally and he seemed like he enjoyed it. That's my personal opinion on the matter. But can you just kind of break down those charges and, kind of explain what they mean?
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you about the murder. And you said something that is very important. You said that you felt that it was intentional. Anytime you have a murder charge, it's based upon mens rea, the intent of the person. For example, if I go out, I'm at my home right now. If I go out in the street and I see someone coming down the street and I'm thinking to myself, the next person that comes down the street, I'm going to take my gun. I'm just going to shoot. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot. I see that person come down. They pass me and I just shoot. That's premeditated. You knew that was going to happen. You knew that those actions could bring death to that person that you shot at. So that's going to be first degree murder. Now, he was charged with third degree murder. Basically, I think in Minnesota, their third degree murder charge would consist of a person that may not have had the criminal intent to do it, but his actions were so depraved that the reasonable person could have known that those actions could cause the death of someone. So it's all based upon intent, what his criminal mind was, what his thought processes were. He may not have went into that situation thinking that me putting my neck, I'm putting my knee in someone's neck could possibly kill them, but doing it for such a long period of time, the reasonable person could understand and could believe that those actions would cause someone's death.
Nice. Yeah, it'll be interesting going forward, seeing how that's handled with the conviction and the jail time. Based on the description that you've given me, I don't think that he went out that day saying that he was going to kill somebody or that I'm going to go target George Floyd and I'm going to kill him. But I think in the moment of the time, I don't think, his actions were responsible. And I think he knew what he was doing. I don't think he started out his day intending on doing that. But in the moment, I think it was what it was. And, he just acted without any regard for human life with the person that he was trying to arrest. So, we'll see what happens going forward.
Well, we'll see what happens with that, but also there are three other people that were there as well.
Exactly.
But we also have to look at this also. Now, without trying to give a legal opinion with the case, I will say this. You have 4 police officers that were on the scene. You have 1 that has been criminally charged and 3 that have not. But at the end of the day, you just have charges. Let's say the other people get charges as well. You have 4 charges or 4 people that have been criminally charged. This does not mean a thing unless there's a conviction in some form or fashion. There have been other police officers that have committed heinous crimes on camera that we have seen that have been acquitted or have not received any kind of charges at all. So I hate to say we need to pump the brakes a little bit and not get so happy about someone being charged.
Right.
That's the first step. The actual, I'm not going to say victory, but the actual justice is done when someone is actually convicted of a crime that he's charged of. Now, let me not get this lost in this situation at all. There's a life that has been lost. So whether he's charged and convicted or whether he's charged and acquitted, nothing's going to bring these people back. So I hope that there is justice found and however we define justice. But at the same time, we also have to understand that no matter what happens at the end of the day, these are lives that can never be brought back. But hopefully justice can be served so that their lives are not taken in vain.
Right. Great way to put it. Now we've reached a part of the podcast that we like to call our Burr-proof segment. We're going to shoot you some rapid fire questions. We don't want you to give it a lot of thought. Just give us your first answer. We're going to roll with it.
All right.
First question, going back to your basketball roots. Give me your starting 5 from any era in the NBA.
Starting 5 for any era, okay? At point guard, I got to go with Magic Johnson.
I agree.
The 2, I'm going to go with Kobe. The 3, I have to go with Michael Jordan. Now I'm going to give you the small lineup. A small lineup. I put LeBron at a 4, and I put Kareem at the 5.
Okay. I was wondering where you was going with that when you put Kobe at the 2, but you came on back to Mike a little bit.
I'm sorry. I can't leave Kobe out of a discussion as one of the greatest.
Yeah,
I can't leave him out of that discussion. So if it's not either or Mike or Kobe, I got to have them on the same team. LeBron can check a 4, and a 4 has to try and check LeBron. So that's a win, in my opinion. And then Kareem, you can't stop Kareem Skyhook. So that's my top 5.
I agree. Hard to argue that, man. Can't beat that. Can't beat that. Give me one thing you miss about college.
Free food.
Nice. Yeah. That's fine.
Free food,
money
all
too.
You need free food. Yep.
What would you do if you entered a talent show?
What would I do if I entered a talent show? I have so many talents. What would be no, I'm just joking. If I entered a talent show, I would probably play my sax. I used to play the saxophone. And I'm not going to say I was Kenny G, but I wasn't bad. So I would probably play the saxophone. And I'm smart enough to know that if I said something like sing, you would try and put me on the spot to make me try and sing right now. So I don't have my saxophone here, so I can say I'll play the sax, and I can just say I was good, and nobody can say whether I was not.
All right, we're going to roll with that. Now, fill in the blank with the nickname. All rise for the honorable judge.
D Nice.
Okay, D Nice. First car you ever drove?
A 1979 doo-doo brown Pontiac Phoenix.
Okay.
The ugliest car you could ever have, but it was the best car I ever had because it was my first. It was mine. It was mine.
Nothing like the first one. Now, this is a question that we call franchise, sign, and waive. You got to franchise a guy that you're going to build your franchise a guy. You got to sign a guy that you're going to keep on your team, and you got to waive a guy that you're not going to keep at all.
Okay.
So you got Scottie Pippen, Kawhi Leonard, Dominique Wilkins. Who you franchising, who you signing, and who you waiving?
I'm franchising Kawhi. I'm signing Dominique, and I'm waiving Scottie Pippen.
Ooh, you just gonna waive the 6-time champ like that?
He's a 6-time champ because you had the greatest player to ever play.
Ooh, man, you didn't take no time to think. You just said that like it was easy, man. Ooh.
Well, let me tell you this. It's a little personal too. I particularly don't.
Okay, give me the backstory.
Okay, it was in the Bulls' last run at the second three-peat.
Yeah.
So I went to Chicago. I'm an attorney. I go up to Chicago for a seminar, and there's a guy named John Rose, who is a reporter for the ABC affiliate that I knew some family members. So I called him while I'm up there, and I said, "Hey, can you give me some tickets to the game?" Jim Rose. So can you give me some tickets to the game? He's like, "Sure." So he gets me tickets to the game. Unbeknownst to me, I am on the floor.
Wow.
And I'm on the floor for the game. So the game plays. They're playing against the Miami Heat. Lonzo Mourning's there. He and Dennis Rodman are going there. They almost get in a fight during the game, right over by me. So this, great game. After the game's over, Jim Rose comes to me and said, "Look, I got to do an interview in the locker room. Do you want to come with me?" So I'm like, "Sure." So I go in the back. I meet commentator at that time. Guys, who's the coach for the Clippers?
Doc Rivers.
Doc Rivers was a commentator like for TBS during the time. He and I talk in the background. I meet a whole lot of players. I get into the locker room, and I'm waiting around for Jim to do his interview. And all of a sudden, somebody comes out of the shower and almost knocks me over, as in, "Get out of my way." Who is that person? Scottie Pippen. So Scottie tries to knock me over. By reflex, I push back. So he looks at me. I look at him. Michael Jordan said, "That's not the guy. You don't want to deal with this guy." I don't know if he's thinking because I'm just about as big as Scotty or what during that time, but that's my Scottie Pippen story. So any team that Scotty's on, he's getting waived.
Oh, wow. That's an incredible backstory. But I'm even more jealous to the fact that you got to watch Michael Jordan play in person. Scottie
Yes.
Pippen play in person courtside, man. That's one
Yeah.
thing I wish I could have done. I wish I could have watched him play in person. I got to, watch him in his prime on TV, but watching him play in person, man, I definitely wish that I could have done that.
Well, let me say this too. I am an Indianapolis kid. So Michael broke my heart several times watching him play against the Pacers. Pacers had some good teams, but they could never get over the hump because Michael was there. So I have mad respect for Michael and I guess, for the whole Bulls. But he always hurt my Pacers.
Yeah.
So
I used to love
like
watching him and Reggie Miller go at it because Reggie Miller had that same fiery intensity that Mike had, man. And
yeah.
they got into the little scuffle, man. So I always
They
knew
got more
Mike
than
was
one
better.
scuffle.
Yeah. But I just loved that somebody just kind of matched that intensity and that dog that Mike had, man. And it just made the competition even better to watch.
Right.
But next question, and this is probably something that you probably use on me too. When you're trying to get off the phone, what's your favorite go-to line?
I got somebody on the other line. Can I call you back or can I get back with you?
Yeah, I'm used to that.
Oh, whatever.
So with everything going on now, have you been able to watch these versus battles on Instagram Live?
I have not. I haven't seen any of that. The only thing, every once in a while when D-Nice is spinning, I'll watch him and listen to him and go way back. But I haven't seen any of the verses yet.
Okay, but we're going to give you a proposed scenario. If there was a versus battle between Anthony Hamilton and Music Soul Child, who would win?
I'm going to go with Anthony Hamilton. I've seen both are great. I love them both.
Yeah, that's
but
tough.
I've seen Anthony Hamilton in concert twice. I've never seen Music Soul Child in concert, so I got to go with the guy I've actually seen in person. So I'm going with A-Ham.
I probably would have said that too, just on a slight edge, but that's tough. That's tough. One of the craziest things you've ever seen in a courtroom?
Craziest thing I've ever seen in the courtroom. I've seen a defendant want to try and fight a police officer. I've seen the defendant try to run up towards a judge, not me, but I've seen the defendant try to run up to a judge. I've heard some crazy things that defendants have said to judges, asking them out on dates. After this is all over, could we go out sometime?
Wow.
So I've seen some crazy things. Matter of fact, I have a little tablet up on the bench with me.
Yeah.
And one day when I retire, I'm going to publish my He Said What book so that everyone can hear some of the things I hear in court. Some of the things I can't repeat right now, but guys, you hear and see some crazy things when you go to court.
Wow. Last question. If you could meet one person that was a non-athlete, who would it be?
Moses. I would want to meet Moses. And I've had people ask me that question before, and people say, "When you want to meet Dr. King?" Or I would want to meet Moses. And the reason why is because he was a part of the Egyptians at one time, and then he left, had to go make his way back, had to lead a group of people out that all of them didn't agree with some of the things he had to say. All of them did not agree with the things he had that he had them do after they got out of bondage and had to be in the wilderness. So there were a lot of things that I'm not going to say I deal with because there's no comparison, but I would want to know how he did it. I want to know his thought process. I want to know some of the things that he doubted himself. So there are a lot of things I would want to know because, you know, when you read stories about characters in the Bible, basically they do exactly what's told based upon the story that you see.
Mm-hmm.
But I would want to know, what are some of the things that you're thinking? I know you did it, but did you have any reservations? What are all the things you were thinking about that went along with it? So that's who I want to know. That's an easy question for me to answer.
And being in the mortal form, you know that there were, you know, thoughts, concerns, but like you said, you're following orders for something that's bigger than you.
Correct.
D. Webb, appreciate you taking time to come through and bless the podcast, man. It's been a pleasure, my man.
Man, I'm happy that you finally got me on, man. I see all these other high-profile people. I appreciate you coming down to the little people and getting me involved, man.
You know what, man? I had Sully on the episode before. He told me the same thing, man. I said, I'm going down my list, man. I'm going down my list. I said, I can't get to everybody in 1 week, but I'm making my way on down to everybody, though.
Well, I would tell you this. I'm starting a podcast, too, that I want to get you on.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I kind of figured that. I seen your logo on Facebook, and it said, wait for it. And I was like, I thought D-Webb might be coming out with a podcast.
Well, we're going to do something, and you're going to be one of the first people that I call. But it's going to be, I'll introduce it next week to everyone, let everyone know what I'm doing. But I would be honored and happy to have you on just to get your perspective on some things.
Would love to. Well, go ahead and plug it, man, so people can go ahead and get prepared for it and know what's coming.
Okay. Well, it's going to be called A Matter of Perspective with Judge Derwin Webb. It's going to be basically a podcast. It's going to be on YouTube. We're going to have some things on Instagram. We're going to talk about some of the things that we see. I'm not going to necessarily give you my perspective because it's not about me. I'm just going to introduce the topic, give people a chance to talk about it, talk about things that are going on in the city. And it's going to be something that's kind of uplifting for people because we get enough stuff that's negative. But we're going to talk about issues that affect our community, our region, our country, our world, and how we can do things to make things a little bit different.
Nice, nice. Well, definitely, man, I'll be tuned in. I'll be subscribed. I'll be looking forward to being a guest on there, man. And I appreciate you once again for coming on and blessing the podcast, brother.
Man, pleasure's mine. Thank you very much.